Haunted Secrets, the sinister museum where 300 years of Viking sorcery were exposed and cursed. Sarah clutched her children, Sophie and Jake, as the unsettling air of the town pressed around them, a chill that felt deeper than the smog hanging above. To them, the new museum promised adventure; to her, it whispered of hidden terrors. The sign outside glinted unnaturally: "Grand Opening, Discover Viking Secrets." An ominous thrill ran down her spine. What secrets lay within? She almost turned back, but their eager faces drew her in. Inside, the museum felt alive. Flickering lights cast long shadows, and the exhibits seemed to breathe in the hushed whispers of anxious patrons. Gleaming artifacts from a Viking settlement, pieces of history, yet they emanated a strange glow that sent shivers through her. The display of rusted swords, ornate shields, and ceremonial masks seemed to twist toward her, watching, waiting. "Mom, look!" Jake exclaimed, his voice soaring over the low murmurs, but Sarah's focus was waning, a whispered warning nagging in her mind. As they stepped deeper, tensions climbed. Sarah noticed the locals outside, faces pressed to the glass, eyes wide with paranoia, their murmurs a chilling chorus of panic. "You shouldn't be here," one old man warned as he caught her eye, the shadows clawing at his features. But the thrill of the outing flipped her unease into defiance. "Just old stories," she muttered under her breath, willing herself to relax. Then came the first sign. A display of a Viking axe shifted ever so slightly. She blinked, thinking it just a trick of the light, but an icy touch of dread sank into her gut. "Guys, let's take a look over there," she suggested, pushing her children toward a bright exhibit. But the whispers grew louder, the air thicker. The axe's shadow danced behind her, an unwelcome companion. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the space, making them jump. The doors slammed shut, locking with an ominous finality. Sarah's heart raced. Panic set in. This was no ordinary museum visit. The lights flickered as if sensing her fear. "What's happening, Mommy?" Sophie's voice shook, and Sarah turned, forcing a brave smile. "Just a little power outage," she lied, but inside her, alarm bells blared. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A flicker caught her eye, a figure, no, a shadow beside the Viking helmet display. It twitched and swayed, beckoning, holding secrets she felt pulled toward. Sarah clutched her children as a cacophony of screams erupted from nowhere, freezing her blood. She turned, looking for the source, but only saw flickering images of tormented faces looking back, mouths open in silent screams. "Run!" The word clawed at her throat as horror washed over her like icy water. Her desperate gaze snapped back to her children, frail and small. She had to protect them. "We need to find a way out now." Shadows danced, inching closer, as if drawn by the essence of fear. Just as she began retreating towards the door, a figure materialized before her, draped in dark Viking garb with eyes like frozen rivers. "You took that which should have remained hidden," it growled, a deep rumble that rattled her bones. The chilling realization hit like a freight train. This wasn't just folklore, it was alive. As the walls trembled, clamors of ancient spirits echoed, Sarah's heart seized with dread. How had they ventured into a nightmare? Would she unearth the frail threads of safety for her children, or was it too late? The storm brewing outside now clamored for entry into their very souls. The air thickened, wrapping around Sarah like a suffocating shroud. The figure before her loomed larger, its features twisting into a grotesque mask, a parody of terror etched into flesh. Sophie whimpered, clinging to her mother. Jake's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. The shadows twisted and writhed behind them, a dark tide, hungry and relentless. "Step away from your children," the figure hissed, its breath carrying a chill that gnawed at Sarah's resolve. The Viking's voice reverberated through the museum, blending into a chorus of whispers that seeped from the walls, echoing tales of blood and betrayal. It was as if the very air held ancient secrets, dark and furious. "No. I won't let you take them," Sarah screamed, her voice hoarse with fear. The figure took a step closer, its eyes like icy voids, swallowing her resolve whole. The history within these walls was alive, but what had she truly awakened? Panic surged through her body like fire. "Do you seek to unravel the curse?" it growled, reaching out with skeletal fingers. Each step forwards made the ground tremble beneath her feet as the shadows drew closer, whispering her name. They called out to her, seducing her with promises of power, yet the laughter that followed sharpened like nails against the soul. Frantically, Sarah scanned the massive hall for some means of escape. The once inviting exhibits seemed malevolent now, their artifacts glinting with greed and hunger. "Jake! Sophie! Follow me!" She turned, dragging them behind her with an urgency that almost felt primal. The Viking's gaze tracked them, relentless. The exit loomed just ahead, but the closer they got, the more the energy shifted. It was no longer a path of freedom, it became a labyrinth of despair. Flickering lights buzzed angrily, casting monstrous silhouettes against the walls, each distortion a mocking reminder of their impending doom. A shriek echoed, unmistakable and raw, it jolted Sarah like a lightning strike. She spun back, eyes wide with terror, as a woman emerged from the shadows, her face pale and hollow. "Run, child. It's not just the past that haunts here," she wailed, before the darkness engulfed her as suddenly as she disappeared. "Mom!" Jake yelled, his grip tightening as he pulled at her. "We have to go." With a surge of desperation, Sarah pushed forward, clutching Sophie tightly, but the floor beneath her shifted, a response to her dread. A slick, shadowy figure coiled from the ground, reaching up with thin, gnarled hands as if to drag them into the abyss. "No!" Sarah cried, digging her heels into the ground. With a primal scream, she pulled her children closer, fighting the pull of the darkness that threatened to consume them. Then, she remembered the Viking artifacts, their cursed essence pulsated around her, emanating the anger and chaos of 1,000 souls. "Touch them!" she shouted, scrambling towards the nearest display of weapons. "They're powerful. They can protect us." The instant her fingertips brushed the surface of a rusted shield, a wave of energy surged through her, igniting her fear into raw force. But it was too late. The shadows lunged with a vengeance, hungry for fresh dread. The walls shook violently as the battle between light and darkness could be felt palpably, a heartbeat of chaos. Sarah felt the weight of history pressing in, a suffocating blanket of centuries-old terror and sorrow. The air crackled, shrouded in uncertainty. Narrowing her focus, she could barely hear her thoughts over the screams of the spirits around them. With one last glance at her children, she steeled her resolve. They would find a way out, or they would face the reckoning of the Viking curse together. But just as the darkened shadows pulled tighter, an unexpected sound erupted, the soft chime of a bell. From the corner of her eye, she saw a flicker of light near the entrance, pulsing with a strangely inviting glow. "Look, Mommy!" Sophie shouted, her small finger pointing. But was it a haven or another trap? With a heart full of dread and hope entwined, Sarah hesitated. Should they risk everything for that glimmering escape, or would ignorance prove to be their salvation? Only time would reveal whether the light was their salvation or a new nightmare waiting to unfold. The glow drew Sarah in like a moth, yet her instincts screamed to resist. Was that light an escape, or a cruel mirage crafted by the darkness to ensnare them? The Viking's anguished whispers intensified, swarming her mind, clouding her judgment. "Mommy, let us go," Jake urged, tugging her arm. "Hold on," she hissed back, wrestling with indecision. Shadows screeched, clawing at her confidence, and the ground quaked beneath their feet as if the museum itself reacted to their uncertainty. The moment felt suspended in time, thick with unspoken words and gathered fear. Sophie clung tighter, and Sarah felt the warmth of her daughter's small body seep into her, a tether to sanity amidst the chaos. The chime rang again, softer now, almost soothing, yet it echoed with an eerie familiarity. "Mom, it's getting closer." Jake's voice broke through her daze. The Viking figure moved with unnatural grace, towering and predatory, its twisted smile beckoning them. Shadowy tendrils curled and unfurled, reaching hungrily. Sarah felt as if they were standing on the edge of a precipice, the void below calling to her in a maddening whisper. "Let us move, now," she shouted, forcing herself to act. She yanked her children, hurtling towards the glowing light. But as they neared, the light shimmered like a veil, morphing into chaotic patterns that evoked memories of ancient battles and betrayals long buried. The Viking's laughter filled her head, sharp and guttural, drowning her reason in a cacophony of despair. Just as they reached the perimeter of the light, it dimmed, and for a heart-stopping moment, all was enveloped in nothingness. Adrenaline coursed through Sarah's veins. "Stay close," she warned, feeling the weight of dread settle around her like heavy fog. Then, with a blinding flash, the light returned. They found themselves not at the exit but in a vast chamber, adorned with petrified relics that once belonged to fallen warriors. Ancient weapons lined the walls, each whispering tales of combat, vengeance, and unending suffering. The air reeked of iron, thick and metallic, chilling her skin. "What is this place?" Sophie whimpered, eyes darting from one display to another, fear etched deeply in her innocent face. "I don't know." Sarah steeled herself, looking around. The chamber felt alive, pulsing with an energy that both thrilled her and filled her with profound dread. "But we can't." The Viking's voice cut through the air, smooth and menacing. "Welcome to your fate," it taunted. "You sought the light, but here lies the heart of the curse. What will you sacrifice to escape it?" "No. I want tea," Sarah cried defiantly, yet deep down, she feared the truths lurking in the shadows. A chill crept in, seeping into her bones, whispering secrets of the past and the price of survival. Jake stumbled back, awestruck by a glittering sword that flickered with an otherworldly glow. "Mom! Look!" he gasped, almost hypnotized. "Stay away!" Sarah shouted, instinctively moving to protect him. The temptation of power coiled around her children like an entrancing serpent, thrumming with a dark allure. As they stood there, rooted in indecision, the shadows writhed more violently. The Viking figure loomed closer, its grin widening, teeth gleaming like daggers. "You must choose, Sarah. Choose your power or suffer the price of your cowardice." The chilling truth settled over her. What would she sacrifice? Just then, Sophie's fingers brushed against a cold, metallic box nestled in the corner, a relic untouched for centuries. As the box began to hum softly, energy surged through the room, drawing Sarah's attention. "Mom, what is this?" And in that moment, her heart raced, caught between terror and curiosity. Would the contents hold their salvation or seal their doom? As the dim hum transformed into an urgent pulse, Sarah realized they stood on the brink of revelation or complete collapse. But how far would they have to go to confront the darkness eager to claim them? The box trembled, its surface shimmering like the surface of disturbed water. Shadows danced around it, curling with a life of their own. Sarah felt the pulse of the chamber synchronize with the hum, a dark heartbeat echoing in her ears. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, yet she felt frozen, entranced by the mystery before her. "Jake, Sophie, step back," she shouted, urgency threading through her voice. The kids hesitated, but the allure was powerful, and despite her command, Jake took a tentative step closer, eyes wide. "Mom, it's beautiful," he said, awe mixing with temptation. Before Sarah could react, the Viking's laughter slithered through the air, resonating with a chilling familiarity. It is a key, Sarah. A key to power. But the question remains, what would you give to wield it? Her heart raced. She couldn't afford to lose Jake or Sophie to the shadows. We don't have time for this. We need to find a way out. But what if this can help us? Jake interjected, desperation creeping into his voice. What if we can fight it? Each word felt heavy, loaded with the weight of what she might lose. And then she saw Sophie touch the box, a shiver of energy rippling through the air, like static before a storm. A crackling noise filled the chamber, and the shadows shrank back momentarily, as if anticipating a jolt of power. No! No! Sarah lunged forward, but too late. The moment Sophie's fingers brushed the cool metal, the box sprang open, revealing a swirling vortex contained within a dark mist that seemed to pull everything towards it, alive and hungry. Mom! Sophie gasped, her small body swaying as if caught in a sudden wind. The room warped, the walls buckling under the force. Ancient relics rattled violently, their mournful cries mingling with the Viking's maniacal laughter. Step away from that! Sarah yelled, her voice lost to the storm. She threw herself towards her daughter, feeling the choking grip of terror around her throat. Jake was frozen, eyes fixed on the swirling mist. What is it? What is happening? It's a trap, Jake. We have to. Then the shadows surged, sweeping forward like a black tide. The Viking figure morphed in and out of the chaos, its eyes glowing red with malicious delight. You sought power, you shall have it. But everything comes at a price. No! Sarah screamed, lunging for Sophie, but the darkness enveloped them. A cold wind howled through the chamber, carrying the acrid stench of decay. She felt the pressure claw at her skin, seeping into her lungs. As the mist threatened to swallow them whole, Sarah managed to grab Sophie's arm. Hold on to me. Don't let go. Gripping her daughter tight, she felt the world tilt, reality fraying at its edges. In that instant, a vision consumed her, a flash of blood-soaked battles, desperate screams, and the Viking King aura surged as a shadowy hand extended from the mist, claw-like fingers reaching toward her, promising strength but threatening everything she loved. Then, with a violent wrenching sensation, the world spun and shattered into shards of light and darkness. They landed hard, slamming into the cold stone ground. The hum faded, but the echoes of the Viking's laughter lingered, filling the air with a suffocating dread. They were no longer in the chamber. They had fallen into something darker. Sarah blinked as her surroundings came into focus, an endless hall lined with horrid faces, grotesque and twisted, their silent screams reaching out to her. Where are we? She whispered, paralyzed by the horror stretching before her. I don't know, Mom. Jake's voice trembled, filled with fear. Looking around desperately, Sarah felt the encroaching shadow on her soul. There was something about this new place, something worse than before. As she stood on the threshold of despair, one thought pierced through: they had awakened a hunger, and now it was coming for them. What would they have to face next? What were these twisted souls waiting for? And worse, was escape even possible? The hall felt alive, its stony floor pulsing underfoot as if breathing, a deep, mournful exhalation echoed around them. Sarah's heart drummed in her chest, a frantic rhythm of fear. The grotesque faces lining the walls bore witness to their despair, shadows spilling from their cracked mouths, the silence suffocating. Each unsettling gaze seemed to pull Sarah deeper into a pit of dread. We have to move, she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. She could sense the urgency creeping into the air, a thick fog of impending terror. With one hand, she gripped Sophie tightly, and with the other, she pushed Jake forward. Stay close. As they started down the long hall, a flicker of movement caught her eye. One of the faces twisted unnaturally, its lips moving silently. Terror lodged in her throat. Did you see that? she gasped, turning to the kids. No. Jake replied, glancing back with wide eyes. But Sophie, her small face pale, nodded. I did. Suddenly, a whisper slithered through the air, wrapping around their ankles like cold fingers. Return what was taken, it hissed, each word tasting of ash. Sarah's skin prickled, shadows shifted toward them, creeping across the walls, eager and sinister. Mom, I want to go home. Sophie cried, panic escalating in her voice. Me too, Soph, but we need to find a way out. We can't stop. Just keep walking. Sarah insisted, forcing herself to sound confident. She stumbled forward, feeling Jake's warm hand in hers, their proximity offering a small comfort against the looming threat. The hall twisted, hallways branching off into darkness, pulling at them like a whirlpool. Where do we go? Jake asked, voice trembling. Anywhere but here. Sarah replied, trying to catch her breath, barely processing how the walls flickered in and out of sanity. Shadows writhed hungrily, their edges forming wicked shapes. In a sudden burst of terror, Sarah felt an icy chill wrapping around her ankle, pulling her back. She screamed as she was jerked to a halt, helplessly tugged toward the maw of a shadowy figure rising before her. It was as if it were hungry, yearning for something she didn't want to let go of. Jake! Sophie! Run! She shouted, her voice breaking, each syllable a desperate plea. Jake threw himself to the side, dragging Sophie along as the figure seemed to sigh, a deep breath filled with malice. Its hand reached out, fingers elongating grotesquely, dark tendrils slithering from its palm. Sarah gritted her teeth, fighting the icy grip around her, struggling to break free. Mom! Sophie cried out, her eyes wide and terrified. With one final, desperate pull, Sarah tore herself away from the figure's grasp. She stumbled but regained her footing, relentless determination igniting within her. This way. We can't give up. As they turned a corner, the world blinked and warped again, the hallway shifting, closing in on them. Suddenly, they crashed into a confined space. The room pulsed with energy, glowing with a sinister light. Look! Jake pointed. A pedestal stood in the center, a shimmering artifact resting upon it, pulsating like a heartbeat. That might help us. We need to grab it. No! Sarah shouted, instinctively knowing it was a trap. We don't know what it is. But the artifact shone with allure, a golden lure wrapped in a cloak of danger. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the chamber, urging them closer. Return it, the voices screamed in unison, drowning out the sound of her racing heart. In that instant, Sarah felt the weight of the shadows press in further, stakes escalating. We can't trust it. All she could feel was the dread clawing at her mind, threatening to swallow them whole. Mom, I think it wants us to take it. What if it can help us? Jake's voice trembled with determination. Before she could respond, the door behind them slammed shut, the shadows closing in, thickening until they could barely breathe. Fear swelled within her, they were trapped, and the artifact pulsed with an unbearable hunger. Would taking the artifact mean their salvation or their doom? What awaited them as the shadows beckoned, torturous and hungry for release? The room quaked, shadows swirling like storm clouds overhead. Everything felt wrong, the air was heavy, as if saturated with dread. Sarah's breath hitched, her pulse a rapid thud in her ears. The artifact's glow intensified, casting a sickly golden light, shifting the contours of the shadows that writhed around them. They seemed to pulse in time with the throbbing object, a sinister harmony born from centuries of dark energy. Mom! We should grab it. Jake's pleading voice broke through the chaos, but the look in Sarah's eyes silenced him. She shook her head, every fiber of her being screaming to resist. The whispers grew frenzied, rising like angry waves crashing against the shore. Take it. It belongs to you. The voices chanted, echoing in a cacophony that clawed at her sanity. She clutched Sophie closer, her own fear mirrored in the girl's wide, innocent eyes, filled with pure terror. "Whatever it is," Sarah steeled herself, "it's not ours. We need to find a way out." The shadows flared, leaping toward them with a monstrous hunger. They twisted with a knowledge that felt ancient and suffocating, as if they had witnessed the darkest secrets of time itself. Each step backward only tightened the noose of fear around her throat. Suddenly, a piercing shriek erupted from the center of the room. Sarah spun to see the pedestal trembling violently, the artifact dancing with malevolent glee. The shadows coiled tighter, nearly coalescing into a form indistinct but threatening, a mass of darkness that pulsed and flickered. "Run!" Jake yelled, shoving Sophie forward, and in that instant, the spell was broken. Sarah took action, propelling herself toward the only exit in sight, a door that had materialized on the far side. It glowed strangely, at odds with the darkness enveloping them. As they sprinted, tendrils of shadow lashed out, grazing Sarah's arms, chilling her to the bone. She stumbled, but Jake didn't stop, he pulled Sophie along. The haunting whispers morphed into anguished wails, "Return what was taken." The door loomed closer, its frame a beacon in the sinister gloom. But as they reached for the handle, the shadows whipped around them, a wave crashing against the very fabric of their reality. "Mom, I can't." Sophie's voice splintered, fear gripping her heart. "Don't look back," Sarah urged, pulling Sophie and Jake closer as she bellowed for the door. But hesitation crept into her mind, she felt the artifact's pull, an insidious invitation entwined in their desperate escape. The shadows buzzed with an excitement, revealing lost souls embedded within their tendrils, begging for release, for vengeance. With a grunt of determination, Sarah yanked open the door. A pitch-black void gaped beyond, an abyss that promised annihilation or escape. They hesitated for just a moment, a fracture of doubt flitting in their minds. The whispers crescendoed in horror. "Jump!" Sarah screamed as the shadows surged toward them, a torrent of darkness flooding in like a storm. They leapt into the unknown, heartbeats synchronizing as they surrendered to gravity, and the world twisted once more. The shadows clawed at their ankles, pulling them back, the artifact's glow fading into oblivion. A deafening silence followed them into the darkness, suffocating and profound. They tumbled through a churning landscape, the shadows snatching at them, their forms blurring. Sarah's thoughts raced, had they truly escaped, or had they simply plunged deeper into the horror? Would the next moment reveal salvation, or would the darkness seize them altogether? And then there it was, a flicker of light ahead, something solid, something real. But as they hurled forward, the darkness roared behind them, the whispers transforming into a deafening chant of desperation. "You cannot escape what is owed." Sarah's heart raced as her vision sharpened on the approaching light, igniting a flicker of hope. But would they reach it, or would the shadows drag them back into the depths of despair? What lay beyond that light? Would it offer a way out, or another trap waiting to ensnare them? The light grew brighter, swirling around them like a beacon. It wasn't just illumination, it hummed with a force that felt alive. Sarah pressed forward, dragging Jake and Sophie along, but the shadows clawed at their legs, fighting to take them back. The air crackled, vibrating with a tension that gnawed at her stomach. "Almost there," she urged, determination surging through her. The light pulsed with each step they took, casting agonizing shadows on the walls, revealing glimpses of things that twisted into grotesque shapes as if mocking their plight. The whispers rose to a fever pitch, merging into a single voice laced with venom. "Stay with us," it hissed, a breathy echo that chilled Sarah's spine. She wouldn't let it win. Not now. The distance closed, and her legs burned with effort. The shadows screamed in rage behind them, dark and hungry. Just as they were about to cross the threshold into the light, a force like iron gripped Sarah's ankle. She fell, pulling Jake and Sophie down with her. "Mom!" Jake shouted, his small fingers desperately trying to pull her up. The shadows surged, wrapping around her like serpents, their cold touch sending bolts of fear racing through her limbs. "Don't let go." Sarah gasped, her heart racing as she fought against the dark tide. The darkness swirled closer, tendrils lashing at them, hungry for their terrified souls. She hoisted herself up, panic lending her strength. Using all her weight, she pushed Jake and Sophie ahead. "Go! Now!" The siblings stumbled into the light. It engulfed them, swallowing their cries. Sarah felt a sharp pull as she clawed her way free from the grip of the shadows. With one final effort, she lunged toward the blinding radiance, feeling the darkness claw and tug at her, threatening to betray her last chance. Just as she crossed the boundary, the shadows gave one more lurch, dragging her backward. The light flared, and for a heart-wrenching moment, everything stilled. The whispers gone, the shadows retreating. Then the world shattered. A thunderous crash sent them tumbling back, and Sarah gasped. Around them, the museum had transformed. No longer dark and twisted, it glittered like a treasure trove, adorned with gold relics and mystical artifacts. But there was something wrong. The air was thick with a different kind of dread. The warmth of the light felt too welcoming, like a deceitful caress. Sophie looked up, eyes wide with wonder and confusion. "Where are we?" "I don't know," Sarah replied, rising slowly. Her heart raced, an uneasy sense of foreboding pressing in on her. Here, the shadows lurked in corners, their whispers simmering like a pot on boiling water. Jake glanced around, fidgeting. "What if this is worse? I don't want to be here." Sophie echoed, clinging tighter to Sarah. In the flickering light, the relics began to vibrate softly, as if awakening from a long slumber. Shadows skittered along the floor, and spectral figures curled within the artifacts, faces twisted in agony and longing. Faint, mournful voices drifted through the air, merging into a chorus of despair. "Help us, release us!" A chill seized Sarah's heart. What have we done? She felt the walls closing in, the golden light suddenly feeling more like a trap than salvation. Swallowed by an eerie silence, they huddled together, dread seeping into the cracks of their resolve. And then they saw it, a new artifact, larger than the rest, pulsing with a familiar sinister glow, beckoning from the center of the room. "No," Sarah whispered, realization dawning. The shadows moved anew, restless and agitated. "Mom, it's calling to us." Jake's voice trembled. "Stay away!" she yelled, but deep down, she felt the old pull returning, the seductive promise of power and a promise forgotten. What was the true cost of their escape? Before she could answer, the shadows surged again, furious and relentless. The whispers returned, hissing through the radiant museum. "You will not escape your curse. You are forever entwined." As the shadows rushed forward, Sarah knew a choice loomed before them, a choice that could shatter their very souls. Would they dare confront the artifact again, or was escape from its power the only way forward, even if it meant facing darkness itself? The shadows lunged forward, a whirlwind of dark fingers and ghostly forms, each more twisted than the last. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest like a jackhammer, the raw desperation flooding her mind. "Run!" she screamed, pushing Jake and Sophie ahead as the shadows veered dangerously close. "Where?" Jake shouted back, fear dripping from his tone. "Anywhere but here." In that moment, time felt like a broken clock, stopped yet racing. The pulsating artifact at the center of the room throbbed like a living heart, and she felt its heavy draw. The golden light flickered, a deceptive flicker that mirrored their frantic thoughts. It promised safety but painted a false picture. Sophie glanced back, eyes glazed with tears. "Mom! We can't just leave. Trust me." Sarah rasped, her voice strained as she tugged her children along. But the whispers surged again, more insistent now, taunting them, echoing from the glimmering relics. "You cannot escape your fate." As they moved, Jake stumbled, crashing into a bizarre compass-like device, engraved with runes that shimmered ominously. The moment he touched it, the shadows writhed as though the artifact's energy had awakened something ancient and sinister. "Get away from it!" Sarah cried, but it was too late. The hiss of the shadows swept over them like a tidal wave, a chaotic rush that felt alive with rage. She lunged toward her son, but the dark tendrils ensnared her, squeezing her like a vice. "Help!" Jake shouted desperately, reaching but not quite able to grasp her hand. Their eyes locked, and in that brief moment, time slowed to a crawl. She saw his wide, terrified eyes so much like her own. A pulse of raw determination surged through her. "Hold on." With a surge of will, she tore free from the shadows for just enough time to grab Jake's wrist, yanking him out of harm's reach. Both she and Jake fell hard to the ground as Sophie barely avoided being caught in the chaos. "Let us move," Sarah gasped, helping Jake up. They scrambled forward, darting through the maze of relics, the air thick with foreboding. They rounded a corner, hearts pounding, and spotted an exit, a heavy door at the far end that seemed to pulse with the same light they had crossed into moments before. Hope flickered in Sarah's chest like a fragile candle, warmth against the cold dread creeping in. But just as they pushed forward, the ground trembled beneath them. The sinister artifact erupted with energy, and a violent shriek filled the air. "You will not break the bond." The echoes flattened Sarah against the floor, the reality of their situation sinking in. "Mom, we can't give up." Sophie's voice cut through the chaos, shaky yet fierce, reminding her of the resolve buried deep within. With a trading glance, they knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a battle for their future. They had to confront it, not run from it. "No more running," Sarah whispered, defiance igniting her blood. They turned back, facing the artifact, the shadows swirling like a dark storm surrounding a chaotic eye. "What do you want from us?" Sarah shouted into the maelstrom, her courage anchoring her. A guttural laugh erupted from the shadows, chilling the very marrow of her bones. "Release what is rightfully ours, or suffer eternally." The shadows stretched and pulled like a living entity, drawing them closer to the artifact's dark heart. Sarah's breath caught. "We won't be your puppets." As the darkness surged forward, an unpredictable storm of fear and fury, Sarah and her children stood as a fortress against it. They would not yield, but they also knew a terrible truth lay within their choice to confront the darkness or surrender to it. Together, she whispered, each word a muscle, a promise. The shadows paused, a heavy silence enveloping them, thrumming with a dreadful anticipation. Would this be their defiance? Or their unraveling? As the artifact thrummed dangerously loud, Sarah could feel the answer dancing on the tip of her tongue, waiting for the final push. What would they unleash in facing their greatest fears? With a final glance at Jake and Sophie, her heart thudding in time with the pulsing shadows, she made a choice. The next moment would decide their fate. "What if it's too late?" Jake asked, voice barely a whisper. "I guess we'll find out," Sarah breathed, tensing for the fight ahead. And then, everything erupted into chaos. The shadows lunged again, twisting around Sarah and her children like a malevolent serpent. The shriek of the artifact reverberated in her bones, a cacophony that drowned out her thoughts. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she stood her ground. "Focus on the light," she shouted, chest heaving. The golden glow beckoned from the heavy door. Shadows flickered in its wake, charged with rage that made her skin prickle. She turned to face the dark mass surging toward them. "We will face you together." Then she felt it, a cold rush creeping down her spine, a whispering doubt sent through the shadows. "You cannot fight what is yours." The shadows coiled tighter, a suffocating grip tightening around her heart. "No!" Jake shouted, yanking at his mother's arm. His eyes widened as he lost his footing, flung backward into the swarming darkness. "Mom!" "Jake!" Panic sliced through Sarah like a knife. She lunged, but the shadows seized her wrist, their icy fingers biting into her flesh. It was a pull she couldn't resist, a gravity dragging her closer to despair. Sophie! She roared, the name bursting from her lips as she twisted free from the darkness. Her daughter stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief, fear-stricken on her face. We can't lose him. With a surge of frantic energy, they pressed forward, cutting through the wrath as they focused on the dim light winked beyond the chaos. But the shadows were relentless, screeching vile promises of pain and torment. Surrender to the bond. They clamored, voices overlapping, each one more maddening than the last. Not today. Sophie shouted back, her tiny voice punching through the dark chorus. The girl lunged toward her brother, grasping Jake's arm with both hands, pulling him back from the shadow's clutches before they could drag him further. Sarah saw it a glint among the chaos, a peculiar runic inscription on the compass-like device Jake had knocked into earlier. It shimmered, illuminating an ancient warning: truth lies in the broken. With renewed desperation, she shouted, the artifact. We need to break the bond. A crack of understanding flickered between the three of them. Fear transformed into a fierce resolve. They gathered together, a united front against the terrifying force threatening to engulf them. On three. Sarah barked, forcing her voice to be steady over the cacophony. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, intertwining their power. A shockwave erupted as they reached the artifact. The pulsating light flared, blindsiding them momentarily as if the relic itself recoiled. Shadows recoiled too, writhing violently, shrieks morphing into a panicked howl. Sarah gritted her teeth, hearts pounding. She could feel the energy coursing through her body, a raw connection awakening something inside her, a well of strength she never knew she possessed. We have to shatter the bond. Do it now. Jake shouted, fury and desperation fueling him. But the shadows surged again, more ferocious than before, tendrils reaching high, clawing at their vulnerability. You will regret this. They hissed. The closer they got, the more gnashing teeth and ghostly figures began to form within the darkness. Sarah felt the cold dread tighten around her throat. Keep pushing, we need to make our choice, now. She could sense the tear of fate hanging overhead, the subtle thrum of what was about to unfold. Just as smoke curled into tendrils around them, Sarah's fingers grazed the ancient engravings, and with one determined breath, she yelled, together. Break it. The moment felt eternal, the air crackling with tension, filled with a promise and a threat at once. The bond stretched and strained, each pulse of her heartbeat echoing like thunder against the dark mass a flash ignited. The roar of energy filled the air, a sharp crack that split the shadows and time itself, the weight of the artifact ready to decide between their chaos or their salvation. And then, as quickly as it started, silence enveloped them. The shadows receded, lurking on the fringes, hungry and seething. Was that it? Sophie murmured, hope flickering like a dim flame. But then Sarah felt it, an ice-cold presence wrapping around her heart, whispering the truth. What if breaking the bond only unleashed something worse? Not yet, they're still here, Sarah whispered, dread spiraling in her chest as shadows hung on the edges, waiting, twisting with an ominous life of their own. Jake's voice trembled, what did we let loose? And in that moment, they realized they weren't safe yet. Not by a long shot. As the shadows surged and swirled with a more sinister intent, the dark confrontation loomed ahead. What truths would they have to confront now? What sinister forces lay waiting in the dark? The shadows fell back, momentarily bewildered, as the frenzied energy from the artifact pulsed softly around Sarah, Jake, and Sophie. But the brief lull in chaos was deceptive, a fragile truce that could dissolve into conflict any second now. Stay close. Sarah barked, feeling the oppressive weight of shadows shifting just outside their perception. Her heart raced not just from the fear of losing her children again but from the sheer unpredictability of what lay ahead. Jake clutched Sophie's hand and squeezed tight. "Every time we think we're free something worse comes," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Not this time," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. They had faced ancient evils and countless horrors together. She wouldn't let them fall apart now. But as she inched forward, she felt the very air thicken, a clamoring resistance that threatened to ensnare them again. Ahead, the glowing artifact cast a warm halo around them, but its allure was tainted with the dark energy that still writhed in the corners of the room. "What do we do now?" Sophie asked, her innocent eyes scanning their surroundings, searching for answers. "Fight," Sarah whispered, determination surging like adrenaline. "We show the darkness that we choose our path." As if triggered by her resolve, the shadows lunged forward, twisting into feral shapes that hissed and snarled, their intentions clear. "You cannot escape the curse," they chanted, a terrifying chorus that surrounded them. "Together," Sarah shouted, rallying her children as the shadows approached like an onrushing storm. They formed an unbreakable circle, ready to face the tide of darkness that crashed in waves against them. "Mom, what if it tries to take us?" Jake's voice wavered, uncertainty flickering between courage and fear. "Then we fight it back, just like we always have," she promised, squeezing his hand for strength. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if considering her words. "You are outnumbered, you cannot wield such power," they hissed, flickering from existence and then reappearing like a malicious game of hide-and-seek. But Sarah felt the truth vibrate through her, they were not powerless. Together, they sparked energy and light. The artifact drew closer, its radiance bathing them in a tangible force. It became their shield, their sword, their silent partner in this battle. As they held one another, a singular thought echoed within them: they didn't need to fight alone. They were stronger together, a united front against the encroaching darkness. With every ounce of courage, Sarah shouted, "We refuse your curse. We choose our own fate." In response, the shadows screeched, a horrific sound like the ripping of fabric, crashing against their resolve. Light pulsed within them, igniting their fear into determination, a fire born from their love. With a synchronized movement, they lifted their hands toward the artifact, channeling their collective energy. It shimmered and hummed, surging in response as it amplified their intentions. "Now!" Sarah commanded, and an immense wave of energy shot forth from them, lance-like beams piercing through the darkness. Shadows scattered, shrieking in pain, and brilliantly illuminated the space. The air crackled with kinetic energy, and suddenly, the shadows began to shift and twist, losing their form, revealing silhouettes of the souls they had ensnared for centuries. Fear twisted with compassion. "They're just lost," whispered Sophie softly, her heart aching for the pitiful figures writhing amidst the chaos. "Then we free them," Sarah declared, eyes blazing with conviction. Pushing the shadows aside, she felt warmth radiate through her fingers and keenly understood they were the key, the connection to everything that trembled beneath the museum's surface. Even the artifact's power had boundaries. It needed their will to guide it, not just their fear. "Join us!" yelled Jake, his voice breaking through the overwhelming screams, calling to the souls trapped within the shadows as a sudden bond formed. Together, they fused their energy with the glowing artifact, merging their will into an unbreakable force that surged toward the darkness. The shadows shrieked and twisted, their forms destabilizing, revealing faces etched with agony and fear. With one final, mighty push, the light exploded, enveloping everything in a blinding brilliance. The air thickened, vibrating with possibility as the echoes of cry faded, leaving only a harmonious melody, a resonant promise of hope. As the light dimmed, Sarah blinked, astonished. They found themselves back in the museum, the shadows extinguished, the air warm and inviting. The relics shimmered like treasures rebirthed, steeped in history but now devoid of malice. "Did we do it?" Sophie asked, voice a whisper, still infused with uncertainty. "Breathe," Sarah said, pulling her children close. The world felt different, alive and pulsating with life. The curse had been broken. But the souls? Jake questioned, his brow furrowed. Are they free? They're free now, Sarah replied softly, her heart swelling. As they moved slowly through the museum, the atmosphere felt lighter. Joy and warmth hovered in the air, and it passed through the artifacts, whispering secrets of the past no longer tethered to pain. Can we come back? Sophie asked, glancing at the wonder around them. Sarah smiled, but this time it felt full of ease, not apprehension. Absolutely. We'll learn together, but first, we need to remember one important thing. She kneeled down, looking into her children's eyes. No matter how dark things get, we face it together. Always together. Always. Jake and Sophie echoed, their spirits lifted. Though shadows still lingered in their memory, they had chased them into oblivion. Together, they had found light in the darkest of places and discovered the power held within their love. As the sun shone through the museum's windows, Sarah surged with gratitude. They had survived the curse, and from this day forward, they would remember. It was time for a new adventure. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.